cold October night. A broken down car on a dirt road. A man, a girl, madness, pain, and the shadows. Oh my God, the shadows. Hey guys, Professor Bill of Comic Book University, and this week's Spotlight on Story, we're going to be talking about The Crow. Now, this is probably one of the saddest, most messed up comic books ever. It is what it is. This was originally created by, written by, drawn, inked, whatever, all of that good stuff, by James O'Barr. This is amazing. This is amazing. So, Caliber Comics Presents issue number 1 was the first appearance of The Crow in January of 1989 by Caliber Comics, go figure. It was originally 4 issues, and then later on a 5th part was added, The Death, which was supposed to be the epilogue for all intents and purposes. Later on, a couple more different interlude parts would show up. So if you've ever read, let's say, Michael Moorcock, the Prince of Melniboné, you'd find a very similar situation where parts are written and then later on people would return to the character and insert other parts. And there's a very similar situation with The Crow, the original Crow, Eric Draven. Later on there would be many other Crows. I was never a fan of a single one of them. We're talking multiple comic books, multiple short stories, multiple offshoots. There was a TV show, a TV series. There was the original movie, which was which featured Brandon Lee, the son of Bruce Lee, who tragically died in the making of that. You can actually tell where the stuntman showed up. There was a reprint of this comic book, the original Crow, and James O'Barr actually did a In Loving Memory of for Brandon. Wow, man, a lot of tragedy around this particular story. I loved the first movie. I could never get enough of it. I could go watch it right now. I could literally pause this and go watch it now, come back and have a conversation and just pick up where I left off. Amazing movie. Probably the first truly successful comic book character. In the ways that we measure success today, that is the first really successful comic book character that came to movies. After that, there were several other movies made. I was never a fan of those. Never a fan of the video game, which was made after the second movie. No, none of them. When that first one was just so good, nothing else is ever going to come close. But it is what it is. So we're going to have a conversation about what happened in this comic book here. So, this comic book series. So we're going to start off with this cat named Jones, and he's stealing a Toshiba. Toshiba what? Looks like a Toshiba VCR. Now there's 2 questions that many of the younger generation may be asking. What the hell is a Toshiba? And what the hell is a VCR? Go look both of them up. So he's just basically stealing this little VCR. He's like, oh man, I'm going to eat good tonight. Yeah, we're good. And berating certain other kinds of criminals. This is in Detroit. This is actually where James O'Barr is from. All of a sudden, Eric Draven kind of pushes out a little tricycle. I don't know, it looks like a scene from Freddy Part 2. Freddy's Dead. The Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. And Jones like, what the heck is this? And all of a sudden, the Crow just appears right in front of him. What the heck, man? And he drops his Toshiba VCR. That was a big deal back in 1989, darn it. So he drops his VCR, and it's like, oh man, you made me drop my that's my money right there. You owe me some money right now. And he pulls out a knife that he had in his back pocket. You owe me some money, man. And he's just talking about, do you remember this and this and this? Do you remember a certain street? Do you remember a boy and a girl? And he's talking to him. He's trying to talk him up. And he kind of sort of does start to remember, but at first he decides to stab Eric Draven. For all that does, he just kind of pulls the knife out, smells it, licks his own blood off of it, turns around and safely, politely hands it back to him and says, would you like to try again? Nah, Jones is good. He's good. So Eric says, listen, Shelby the Giant gave up your information so that you would know where I can find several people. Fun Boy, T-Bird, Tintin, Tomtom. Okay, I thought I was going to remember all of these guys. T-Bird, Tomtom, Top Dollar, Fun Boy, and Tintin. Now, I imagine that most people here have seen the movie, if not everybody has seen the movie. I imagine maybe half of those viewers have seen or have actually read the comic book. So, allow me to explain. Tomtom is a character that was completely neglected in the movie, and Tomtom in the book is actually, Tomtom in the movie is actually coupled with Skank. All right, Tomtom and Skank were both characters in the comic book, and they were both put together and called Skank in the movie. So that's what happened there. Top Dollar is he's a low-level gangster who's, he deals in blow. In the movie, he was made to be Top Dollar was the main bad guy. Turns out, he's the one who ordered all that stuff. So your mission's not actually done. That didn't happen in this comic book. Top Dollar was low rent. T-Bird was the main guy in this. Tintin didn't use knives, and yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know for the transition. So he says, this guy Shelby the Giant, he gave you your information. He's like, there's no way Shelby would give that information. He pulls out a pair of like rosebud clippers, whatever. He says, actually, it cost 3 digits. I would have brought the digits as proof, but I made him eat them also. That was part of the deal. So you're going to give me the information of where I can find T-Bird, or you're going to make another decision. What's that? Fingers or toes? So he gives out that information really quick. He's like, listen, I don't know where this, that, and the other thing is, but I can help you out to find, who did he say that he's going to look for? Somebody else. Anyway, he's like, I'm gonna tell you can find somebody else here. So he's like, okay, fine. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look for these guys. And it seems as though he's gonna let this guy go. So now we're gonna have a little interlude where Eric is on a train and he's looking out, and this beautiful white mare is running side by side with a train. He's just looking at this beautiful creature, and all of a sudden it gets caught up in some barbed wire, and the more it struggles, the more bloody it gets, and he's staring at this thing, and then the crow appears on his shoulder and says, I told you not to look, boy. And all of a sudden the ticket master shows up, and he's a skeleton, and says, ticket? The crow says, well, this is interesting. This is him coming back to life from death. We're going to get more into how he actually died, because right now he doesn't fully remember a lot of what happened in his life. So he's coming back with very partial memory clips, partial moments of what happened. And he's recovering them the longer he's alive, brought back. And of course, the more he sees these people who he saw when he died, he's remembering more. So we're going to go on to Tintin now. This was his first kill in the movie, first kill here. And there's guys who show up like, hey, Tintin, man, check it out, man. I got this really cool gun. You want to buy this gun? Just $100, man. It's really good. Serial number's been taken off. It's completely clean, dude. Tintin's like, mind if I see how good it works? He's like, oh, yeah, sure, man. Let's go down to... No. He shoots this old woman. We find out later that her name is Bev. Shoots her. Oh, no, B. Her name is B. Not that important. B-E-A, whatever. It's like, what'd you do, man? Then he goes and shoots the other two. Says, you sold me some faulty equipment or whatever at some point, and you've been moving in on Top Dollar's turf. Not cool, dude. Not cool. So this, as it turns out, is actually the guy that Eric Draven was told by Jones where to find him. So he does find him, and he puts a little fear of God into him. Forget that. He puts a little fear of the crow into him. They go and they have the little conversation. And he says, I'm not here to grant you mercy. Do you remember this? Do you remember that? Do you remember all these things? Like, yeah, I remember. I remember this and that. And he's killed. He tries to break him down, but Tintin just, all these guys, remember, they're in their little chemical romance. They're addicted to all sorts of things. So there's only but so much fear that they're capable of generating, especially when they're that high. So Eric shoots him in the head. Now, like I said, no, unfortunately, there was no cool knife scene. I gotta admit, that was way better in the movie. So, put the crow in the form of a heart on him. We see a couple other scenes at this point. We find how Eric he has his little memories. He's bringing these things back. He says amazing things that when I was in high school and in vocational school for commercial art, we used to, those of us who were actually into comic books, we used to recite lines from this book back and forth to each other. And one of my favorites was actually immediately after the death of Tintin. There is a man playing a violin, and the strings are the nerves in his own arm. So in the next book, we see Top Dollar is going to be the main guy that, the main antagonist that Eric is going to be going after. And some of his crew are telling Top Dollar, hey man, yeah, this dude blew Tintin's head right off. What are you going to do about it? He's like, whoa, you telling me what to do? It's like, no, man. I'm just saying, like, you look weak. You look played if you don't, go out and find this guy and take him out. I'm just saying, man. People are talking. Top Dollar's not having it. And he's a bully, but it is what it is. So his right-hand man is actually Fun Boy. And he points out just several aspects of how he's going to go about doing business from this point on and how everybody's going to follow suit. He wasn't that interested in Tintin, and he's more interested in making money than anything else. Well, Eric had a little bit something else in mind, and Eric shows up and he kills everybody who's at that table. There are a couple of really good bloodbath scenes in these comics, and this is just the first of them. At the end, Top Dollar is there, and he's just like, listen, man, I'm going to give you, I got $5,000 cash right over there. I got, this really cool car, Pontiac T-Bird, I think it was, whatever it was, who cares? I got this car, I got all this drugs. Leave the drugs if you can. But, if you want the drugs, just take the drugs, and I don't care, just whatever, man. Just come on, man. Just let me live. Eric's not having it. He says, you would barter your life with chemicals? Top Dollar just can't understand it. It's like, what? I don't understand. Are you stupid? What's the matter with you? No, he's not stupid. He's dead. And so are you. And he shoots him. Actually shoots him right through the eye. Doesn't die. Just has one of those little side action things. So there's still some more cursing. He's like, screw you. Because he knows that he's dead. Like I said, there's only but so much fear that these drug-addled SOBs can possibly get. And Eric puts him out of his own misery. So, he's just a bloodstain on a wall at this point. So, we find out more about some of the characters in this book as this book goes on. Case in point, the woman who was killed on the street, B, I mentioned, she has a cat named Gabriel. I know in the movie it was actually Eric and Shelley, his wife, Shelley's cat. But no, it wasn't. It was actually this girl B's cat. Eric just knows these things. And he goes to, and he rescues Gabriel, brings him back to his house that he had just bought for Shelley before he died a year ago, before he was murdered a year ago. And mind you, he's just touching things and looking at things and trying to gain all these memories back so he knows what he's fighting for as opposed to just killing these people. He actually wants the feeling. And it's funny because the entire time the crow keeps on saying to him, don't look, boy. I told you. Don't look. The crow, of course, can't understand how important that is to Eric. that he has to feel the hurt. And he is feeling hurt. As he's going on, he's stopping, he's taking time out of his day, out of his revenge time, and he's actually cutting himself. And all of this, mind you, is coming from James O'Barr. It should be understood that James was hurting in a major way, and I don't claim to know any of this. I only know what I read. I only know what was spoken. I only know the little bit that he would choose to say. I actually met James O'Barr, and yeah, he's a really cool person. He told me a couple of things, some things that I think are personal that he didn't mean for me to tell anybody, but whatever. I know that he is a Detroit native and spent a lot of time in many interesting places in Detroit. Wow. So what he wouldn't tell me is what I already knew, and I would never consider asking him about it. But this comic came out of his need to try and understand what was happening in his life, because his girlfriend, whom he clearly loved, was actually killed by a drunk driver. Yeah, let that sink in for a little bit. So all of this is coming directly from his psyche. So Eric goes out to hunt down some more of these guys. And one of the guys he comes across is Tomtom, who would otherwise also be known as Skank in the movie. Well, Skank is beheaded immediately. Tomtom turns around. What the heck is this? What's going on? And he tries to go after Eric, but Eric's he's too fast. He's too good at what he does. And he's got a katana. And he winds up slicing off his feet at the boots. So Tomtom is laying there and he's bleeding out. Eric goes and puts all of the bodies in the corner. Tomtom is still alive. And he starts questioning, where can I find Fun Boy? He's like, all the blood loss. I'm just tired, man, and I'm really cold. Hey, man, my boots are right over there. Could you get them for me? My feet are really cold. And this is cold. Like, this is some cold stuff. Wow. So at one point, he finally does give the information. He's like, I'm not going to let you rest or anything until you tell me where Fun Boy is. And he finally tells him. He says, Mr. Ghostface, can I go to sleep now? Yeah. Sweet dreams. So at this point, he needs to find the ring that he had given Shelley. So, of course, he's going to go to Gideon's pawn shop. This is very similar to what happened in the book. There's no need to really go into extra special detail. But it was very interesting the way that he was able to find these things. He does come across a police officer, Adelard, I think his name was. Albright. Officer Albright. Officer Albright and the captain of the police force, Captain Hook, he's called. They're both combined in this story, and he's given a bit of a backstory that helped, I guess. I wouldn't mind seeing more about that backstory, but whatever. So Albright is just this dude, and he's really scared. He's trying to do right by the law, but Eric isn't planning on killing this officer. He has no interest in killing this officer. But he's like, I'm not going to kill you, but I am going to walk out that door. Oh, by the way, you got about 2 minutes before this bomb goes off. I set a bunch of kerosene out. So the officer's like, dude, not cool, man, not cool. And he goes and after the explosion, he goes and calls Captain Hook, and he explains the situation. So at this point, Eric's going to go and try and find Fun Boy. Now, in order to find Fun Boy, he's going to go to Sandy, who is his sometimes girlfriend. Basically, she just goes and gets with him for drugs once in a while, when she's not getting it from Ugly Face Patrick, whatever this cat's name is. And he winds up meeting Sherry. Now, Sherry is this young girl, and She's basically, what was her name? Sarah. Her name was Sarah in the movie. Here, Sherry is just this, she's this beaten up, dirty girl who's practically living on the streets. Like she's got a home, but mom's never there. She's always going out and getting high. This kid is ridiculous and neglected. And she says, she went to go be with Fun Boy. He's such and such. That's where she gets her medicine from. It's funny. She calls him a clown. She says, are you a clown, mister? And he calls her a princess. It's cute. So he gives her Shelley's ring, the engagement ring that he gave to Shelley. And Sherry is so overjoyed because she's never gotten anything. She's never been given anything in her life. So he also promises, I'm going to come back. Ah, man, the story's going to get to you. So he goes off to find Miss Skin, he calls her at one point, and says, he's slowly walking closer and telling Fun Boy, I know you got that gun under your pillow, and if you go for the gun, I promise you, I will kill you long before you point it at me. There is no, you got me dead, bang, Fun Boy. That doesn't happen in this book, sorry. And there is no guitar moment in here either, although that would have been cool. Okay, so he says, he keeps on walking closer and he says, I'm going to need you to leave so I can talk to Fun Boy alone. And you should do it before the space between us becomes a tiger. That is a cool line. Especially considering the fact that outside on the stairwell going up to this place, more and more cats seem to appear. He says, I want you to go home. And there is a bunch of my friends outside waiting to lead you back home. And yes, he does say that line. Mother is the word for God in the lips and hearts of all children. Do you understand? And he says it again. Beautiful line. So now he's going to have his little fun with Fun Boy. And there is the moment where he's sitting on the chair talking to him. The line about Jesus walks into a bar with 3 nails, that's much earlier in the comic book, but it's thrown here in the movie, whatever. And he goes and has this conversation with Fun Boy and says, you know me, and you remember all these things. And he's like, yeah, I don't regret anything, or I'm a bad person. This happens several times in the comic book. Fun Boy gets hung out on a string, a fishing line. So he says, I'm going to need you to meet me with all of your friends at such and such place. All right, and I'll meet you there because I want to make sure that I can kill all of your friends. He says, okay, bud, no problem. 7 blackbirds in a tree. Count them and see what they be. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy. 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy. 5 for silver, 6 for gold. 7 for a secret that's never been told. You're all gonna die. He does actually go there at one point in the comic books, and Fun Boy is laughing. He's having a good amount of time. He gives him the opportunity to say the line that's the little poem that he does, and then he proceeds to kill everybody. At first with his bare hands. Then he starts taking their guns and murdering them. Just wicked violence. He's got blood all over him at this point, and Fun Boy's all by himself, and he's trying to be sane, but he can't. He's lost it. And, he's just too far drug-addled. He's too far gone. And he's basically telling him, listen, man, I wish I could have been, or I wish I could feel bad for it, but I don't. I'm just an evil person inside, man. I don't regret anything. I wouldn't take anything back. And you find out that he was a particularly wicked person. So we're gonna get more into that in a bit. We come across his actual story at this point, everything comes into play because he's telling Fun Boy, I need you to go to Tintin, or to, not Tintin, Tintin's dead, man. Skank is dead. Skank's over there. Skank's dead. He tells Fun Boy, I'm going to need you to go to T-Bird, and I'm going to need you to go and tell him to meet me at that place on the road on I-75. You know the place I'm talking about, right? Yeah, I remember. And I'll tell him, will you do me a favor? What's that? Kill me painlessly? No problem, Fun Boy. So now we're going to go into this interlude, this other comic book where we get to see what happened. These guys were always in love, these two, Shelley and Eric, they were always in love, and man, it's a beautiful story. And then they're out in a park, and there's just all these things that they want to do, and at one point they're coming back and they're driving, and it's getting ready to start raining, but the car breaks down and probably blew a rod or something. That's what he's suggesting. And he's out trying to figure out the car. He can't fix it. And all of a sudden these kids, these jackasses, come driving by. They throw the bottle out, and he bumps his head a little bit like, what the frig? So of course this has to happen on the road. And because I told you James O'Barr's actual story. Anyway, these guys back up. And he's like, Shelley, I want you to wind up the windows and lock the doors. There's no place for them to go. So he's just going to go up and he's going to talk to them. Hey, guys, what's up? It's like, oh, hey, you need some help? No, we're fine. You sure? A little bit of help? Nope, we're good. How about your girl in there? Does she need some help? No, we're fine. And Eric is standing there staring down T-Bird, and vice versa. He says, why don't you guys go and see how the lady's doing? Eric says, why don't you just give us a break, man? And this is where all of a sudden they see weakness. Gee, weakness? Imagine one person standing up to a whole carload of gangbangers. It's like, oh, you begging us, man? You begging? We should kill you just for that. Well, these guys are over there and they're licking the window, and she's scared. And they don't actually, James O'Barr doesn't show the scream. He doesn't, all the screams and the begging and the crying. He doesn't show any of that. It's just assumed. And then at some point, they'll say, make her stop screaming. But you don't actually see or hear the screaming. There's no onomatopoeias for that. So Eric runs over to try and stop these guys, and freaking T-Bird, man, he pulls the trigger. Of course, when he's got his back turned, it's like, hey, bud. He doesn't die. He doesn't even go down. It's like, wow, man, get him again. So he does. Comes up behind him and pops him again. Eric doesn't actually die. Eric is paralyzed. And he's laying there. And his face is facing towards Shelley and what they're doing. And this is where he hears the voice, which it turns out is the crow. Don't look. Just don't look. You don't need to do this to yourself, Eric. Just don't look. But Eric can't help it. So he sees them repeatedly rape her. At one point, one of the guys stomps on her head and actually crushes her skull. They come up and actually shoot her in the head. But Fun Boy didn't have his turn yet. And half of her head is missing. She's dead. And he does his business. Yeah. This is about as sick gets. When she goes to the hospital, she's dead on arrival. And in the next room is Eric, who is paralyzed. But he kind of comes to at the end when the police captain, Captain Hook, comes in and, like, Eric, I don't know if you can hear me or not, but, like, here's my card. If you can give me anything, like, you shouldn't have had to go through this, man. Anything you can do to let us know, contact me, and we'll try and find these guys. And Eric does come awake just for a couple of moments, and he says, the crow, he told me not to look. So, yeah, this is pretty messed up. This is really messed up. So, we're now going to see in essentially the final book, Eric taping up his hands with black electrical tape, and he's ready to go out and finish what he's got to finish. And he's going to go and he's going to try and confront Fun Boy and specifically T-Bird. Well, Fun Boy's trying to explain to T-Bird, listen, man, the guy, the ghost face dude, we got to go out there to this road. And he's like, I'm not going. He's like, do you mind if I at least go and get high in the kitchen really quick? He's like, yeah, and then get the hell out of my sight. So he goes in the kitchen, and there's Eric. He says, well, what's up, bud? He's like, well, he's not going to go. He's going to go, someplace else. He's like, oh, I know. But you did your job. And now I'm going to give you what I promised you. I'm going to kill you painlessly. So he gives him a lethal injection he allows him to inject himself with a lethal amount of morphine. And he dies that way. Heart explodes, whatever. Eric goes after T-Bird. Oh, hey, Shelby the Giant is there, missing 3 digits. And he shoots him. He was actually sitting in the T-Bird, next to T-Bird. He was in the car, sitting next to T-Bird, and he shoots his head, blows his head clean off. He's like, oh my God, gets out, and he's like, what? He's like trying to use the windshield wipers to get the blood off. Eric is sitting on the top, and he's like, you're such a fool, T-Bird. The blood is on the inside. So he says, get out of the car. Where are your friends? Cool. Right down there? Stay here, because I want you to watch me kill every one of them. So there's actually 2 scenes here. One where he goes up into this apartment and he kills all but one of the guys up there. One of the guys is saying, listen, man, I got a kid and an old lady. I don't want to, I don't really want to do this. I just want to go home. Eric, as the Crow, kills all these guys except for that guy. Go home. He shows some mercy, man. Redemption is after a certain degree or before a certain point is okay with him. So he says, so then he goes, down the street. He goes after these guys, and yeah, he does one of those things where it's just, go ahead, light me up. And then he gets shot up. He's still standing there smiling. Does one of those walk against the wind things and disappears, and then just starts showing up, and he does another one of those things where he's killing everybody with his bare hands at first, then taking their guns. And he already had his own guns, which is funny. Mind you, all of this had happened after he'd sold his house, or not sold, he burnt down his house because he just wants that memory to die. All the tethers to his life, he just needed them all to go. And the cat Gabriel, he wraps with a red ribbon around its neck and a note to the police captain, Captain Hook. It says, why don't you take care of this cat? Also, I thought it was a boy. Turns out it's a she. She's going to have a couple of kittens in a couple of weeks. A few kittens in a couple of weeks. So I was like, man, I hate cats, but okay, fine, whatever. He walks away with the cat. All cute stuff. So now Tintin decides to try and escape. He gets in the car, and he's like, man, Shelby, you stink, man, you stink. I'd pull over and kick you out, but I ain't stopping for nothing. I'm getting out of here. And he winds up getting lost. He winds up going down the wrong road. But it's actually the right road. It's down I-75. And he looks up and he sees in the rearview mirror, Eric is right behind him. He stole a car of his own and pulls him over, causes him to crash. T-Bird's legs are broken. He's not going anywhere. And then here comes Eric. They don't actually show the death. But oh yeah. So at this point, he's ready to go home, so to speak. He does stop off and see Sherry again one last time. The second and only other time. There is no "it can't rain all the time" moment. Can't rain all the time. which is sad, but hey, whatever, man. The movie was awesome, so I'm good with them adding that and a couple other things. But he does kiss her on the head, and you get the impression that her mother didn't clean herself up. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't that scene where he makes the morphine come out of her system. So you get the impression that she doesn't become a better person or anything like that and start making eggs sunny side up and whatnot. Because he's talking to Sherry and he says, I know that life isn't fair and it's not going to get much better, but you will see me again. And when you do, that's when everything will be fair. Because I do believe that's the case. So you figure out what he meant by that. And then he goes off to meet Sherry. Now, we see him laying on the grave. We see all the leaning against her tombstone. And all of these scenes are showing up. And we see the gun laying there by his side. Now, I don't actually see the smoke coming from the gun, but you do get the impression that he did put a bullet in his head now that his mission is complete so that he can go home. Guys, this is generally like one of the most messed up, saddest freaking comic books ever. And geez, this was 1989. So I was a freshman in high school when this came out. Wow. And yeah, when it came out, and I found the comic book when it was a completed comic book by the end of 89. So, well, not by the end of 89, I guess by the beginning, whatever, somewhere around 1990. Excuse me. I found it at my local comic book store, which is closed now. Ugh, how sad. But, yeah, dude, like, this was an absurdly amazing comic book this came out of nowhere. It's often been said that it is the best-selling black and white graphic novel ever. I believe it. I think it was IGN who their tallies brought him at The Crow as the 37th most popular character, superhero, whatever, comic book character of all time. That's a big deal for an independent. How many people have really heard of Caliber Comics? You know what I'm saying? They went out of business, for crying out loud. They're back now, but they don't even have the license for The Crow anymore. I think it's IDW who has the license for The Crow. At the time of this recording, they were just doing The Crow Memento Mori. So, like, there's a lot of history here, and nobody, in my opinion, has come even close to repeating what James O'Barr has done, aside from the movie, which was based on exactly what he'd done. And they added a little, took a little out, merged a little, and it was just fine. It was perfectly fine. I actually think I'm going to go watch that movie again right now. Anyway, then I'll come back and edit this. Hope you enjoyed this. This is a very emotional comic book. Whew, this is an amazing comic book. Details below where you can get the comic book legally. And that's it. That's it. Support your comic book people. All right. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed. He screams and pounds his head against the wall until wailing phantom fire trucks pace across his vision. Pain. Pain is all he wants. And hate. Yes, hate. We shall never forget and never forgive and never, ever fear. Fear is for the enemy. Fear and bullets.